everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Jill and today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in February. So I was only able to read 8 books this month because school has just been absolutely insane. Like, I cannot even describe to you how busy I have been with college, and I thought that this semester was going to be super easy. Like, January was super chill, you know, I was able to read 15 books, but then February got super serious. Yeah, most of the books that I read were actually romances because of Valentine's Day and February and all that kind of stuff, and plus I've just been super into romance lately. If you've been on my channel, I've just kind of fell down the hole that is adult romances. So yeah, let's just get into all of the books that I read this month. The first book that I managed to complete this month was Loveless by Oseman. This book was really special and I'm really glad that I read it. This book basically follows Georgia as she basically discovers that she is asexual aromantic as she goes to university, and Georgia is one that always has dreamed about love and she feels like she has figured out love. She reads a lot of fan fiction and she just loves talking and reading about love, but she herself has never really been in love, and the thought of that just doesn't really seem like her vibe. But everyone around her keeps pressuring her, like, okay, you need to get a partner, you need to go on dates, etc, etc. So Georgia makes a plan finally when she gets to university that she's going to try to get a partner and try to kiss someone, but all that kind of unravels when she starts to question if she even wants that, and I just really enjoyed it. So at this university, she is actually part of like a Shakespeare club, and I just love like the headers of these chapters. Like, see, like Shakespeare and houseplants. The headers of the chapters were one of my favorite things. I absolutely loved it. But we're not just following Georgia, we're actually following all of her friends, and this story is really about platonic love and really loving your friends and how friends can be just as important or even more important than romantic relationships, and I just really had a fun time with it. I did get a little bit frustrated with Georgia towards the end of this book, and I felt like a lot of it was very repetitive, but that is fair because she was trying to figure herself out, so she had a bunch of like reoccurring thoughts. But as a reader, it was just kind of a little bit repetitive to read, but that's just my opinion. And also there were some miscommunication that was happening in this book that I just really don't like miscommunication, so I was a little bit frustrated, but you know, it is what it is. Oseman continues to be an author that I absolutely love. Her writing and her characters, I think that they're just so fleshed out. And I think this book is just so wonderful if you want to learn more about asexuality or aromantic people, or if you yourself might be starting to question that. I think this book does a really good job of portraying that. And of course, Georgia, this is just like one example of what an asexual aromantic feels like. There are lots of different variations, and it's really made clear in this book that this is just like one way that this can happen. Anyway, so yeah, I really enjoyed it. I love the Shakespeare stuff because I'm such a Shakespeare geek, and I love the friendships. Yeah, this was just really good. I think I ended up giving it a 4 stars because, again, it was a little bit frustrating, but overall I really enjoyed it. Next, I was finally able to finish These Violent Delights by Gong. This was one of my most anticipated books of last year. I was so excited for this book because it is a Romeo and Juliet retelling set in 1920s Shanghai. And I was just so stoked. I was so stoked going into this book, and I had heard so many great things, and I loved it. I ended up giving it a 4.5 stars. I think I probably would have given it a 5, except that, again, with school and I was like so swamped, I would only read like a chapter at a time, and so this book really took me like 2 weeks to finish. And for me, I feel like if I don't read a book super quickly, I kind of fall out of love for it because I only am reading like a chapter at a time. It's really just disjointed when I'm reading it, but that's like not the book's fault. That is my fault. So I feel like I would have given it a 5 stars. I really enjoy Romeo and Juliet's relationship. I know this is pitched as a Romeo and Juliet retelling, and it definitely is, but I think people kind of get the wrong impression about this book and think that it is a love story, which it is in a way, but the Romeo and Juliet, like how most people know that Shakespeare story, actually happens before this book starts. So that's just something to keep in mind because I know some people didn't know that going in. I didn't know that going in. It's very much like a hate to love kind of romance, a lot of political intrigue, and like Romeo and Juliet are from the rivaling clans, and so they have to basically team up in order to fight this monster that has started to plague Shanghai. And yeah, I just really enjoyed it, and I cannot wait to read the sequel of this book, which is coming out I think later this year. It's a little bit slow at the beginning, but overall, yeah, really enjoyed this one. Alright, camera died, but we are back. Next up, I read 2 historical romances by Beverly Jenkins, and I actually really enjoyed both of them. First one was Destiny's Surrender by Beverly Jenkins, and I actually really enjoyed this one, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. I was so excited because I had read one of Beverly Jenkins's books, I think last month, and I did not really vibe with it. I didn't really enjoy it too much, and so I was a little bit wary going into this one, but I absolutely loved this one. This one basically follows a woman named Billy, and she is actually a prostitute, and and the hero of the story is named Drew, and they kind of have a really special relationship, and Billy actually ends up getting pregnant with Drew's child and doesn't tell him about it. She kind of goes out of town and has the baby, but then something really scary happens to Billy and basically drives her to try to find Drew, basically say, hey, so here's our son, you have to help like raise him now. The story kind of goes from there, and I just thought the overall story was really sweet. Again, if you've been on this channel for a while, you know that I love my romances to have strong family units, and this one definitely did. I absolutely loved Drew's family that is in this book, and I just love the relationship between Billy and Drew. Again, I love romances with children, so this one just really checked my boxes, and I just really enjoyed it. Also, I read these out of order. This is the second book in the Destiny series, and I thought you could read them out of order, but I suggest that you probably don't, because characters from the first book like are heavily in the second book, and I kind of felt I was missing something because I hadn't read the first book. And the next book I read was book number 3 in the Destiny series, and that is Destiny's Captain. And this is a pirate romance. If anyone is interested in pirate romances, I think this one did a great job, because actually the heroine, named Pilar, is actually the pirate, and she steals the hero, his name is Noah. She steals Noah's ship and basically like kidnaps him and steals his ship, and it was truly like one of the funniest scenes that I've read in a historical romance is when she steals his ship. It's just gold. They end up having to come together, and Noah demands that she marry him, and it kind of goes from there. And this romance is just perfect if you're looking for a really feisty heroine, because Pilar is definitely that. And again, I just loved the romance. We also get the strong family unit, because I don't know if I said this, but the Destiny series, it follows like 3 brothers. And so Noah is the brother of Drew that I talked about for the second book. And yeah, this one is so fun. And again, I really love Beverly Jenkins, because she is a Black historical romance author, and all of the characters in her books are always different races. I've read a pirate romance before, but this one was excellent. Next up, I read The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss, and this is one that I had seen over BookTube over the past couple months, and this like made some people's like favorite book of the entire year, so I thought I would give it a try because it sounded like it was really interesting to me, and I ended up loving it, especially the end. I only gave it 3 stars, not 3 stars, I only gave it 4 stars instead of 5, because the first half was a bit slow and I wasn't really connecting with the story, and I was listening to it on audiobook and I had to like re-listen to a bunch of parts because I just was not having it at the beginning. But the second half, this book basically, it's kind of hard to describe, but it is kind of retellings or like reimaginings of classic Gothic tales, like think Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Frankenstein, Dracula, The Island of Dr. Moreau, I think is the other one. And I had just recently, like last year, taken a class where we read all of these classic Gothic novels. So this book was just everything to me. Sherlock Holmes and Watson are also in this book. So it like retells these stories, but they feature like really strong female leads. Yeah, the main character in this book we have is Mary Jekyll. We also have Justine Frankenstein and a couple others that are descendants of these really famous Gothic men, and they all have to come together as this kind of feminist group to solve the mystery on their own. And again, Sherlock Holmes and Watson are there as well, but they definitely take like a back seat in the narrative. And these girls are just so wonderful to follow. It was just such a joy to read, and this book is kind of told interestingly, and some people like it, some people hate it, but in the book it's told from the point of view of one of the girls like writing their story, but the other girls in this group actually like interject and say their own thoughts, like that's not how it happened, or oh, you're being too flowery, or etc, etc. And so it kind of, sometimes it took me out of the story, but mostly I just really enjoyed their input. I thought they were hilarious. I feel like I didn't really explain that as well as I could have, but if you like Gothic novels and you like maybe having strong female leads in those Gothic tales, I would highly suggest this book because it is just so much fun. And even if you're not necessarily familiar with the Gothic tales, I know people who have read it and also still enjoyed it because they do a good job of explaining the Gothic tales, but I feel like you might get more out of it if you previously had experience with the Gothic tales. But I don't know, I just had a great time because I just recently read all of them. Excited to read the next one, even though it is like 100 pages. Next, I've read a pretty disappointing book because I was highly anticipating it, and that is First Comes Like by Alisha. This is the 3rd book in the Modern Love series. If you've seen my favorite romance video, you know that the first 2 books in this series I absolutely adored, and this one just fell super flat to me, and I only gave it 3 stars, you know, which is still a good rating. I still had a good time, especially the first half I really enjoyed. For this, it was just that the pacing felt super off and the romance felt super off to me as well. I just didn't have that same chemistry as I did with Alisha Rye's other books. There was just something missing there. We follow our main heroine Gia, who appears in the previous 2 books, and she is a Muslim beauty influencer, like on YouTube. She makes beauty videos. We also follow this Bollywood soap opera star, I guess you would say, as the hero, and he has come to America to work on a new project. And Gia has been texting this guy on Instagram for like a really long time, and she finally decides that she wants to meet him, but he's being like super weird and doesn't really want to meet her, and so she surprises him by showing up at one of his events. And Dev, who is the hero, acts like he has no idea who she is. So Gia decides either she's been catfished by someone using his Instagram account, or he's being super weird and pretending that he doesn't know her, and either are really bad options for her. Kind of goes from there. I don't really want to spoil anything, but it is their romance. I don't know, it was just, I didn't really feel that chemistry really at all. It only starts to pick up in terms of the romance when you're like 90% of the way through, which makes sense when you know like the cultures surrounding the characters and they kind of explain that they don't really want to have a sexual relationship until they're married, etc. And that's fine. It just, the rest of the pacing just felt like really odd to me and really strange, and again, I just didn't feel that spark that I did for the previous 2 books. First half was really, really sweet. We have Dev is actually taking care of his niece, and I really loved her within this story, and I really loved the culture and the family dynamics that were explored in this book. But yeah, overall just 3 stars because it was fun in one way, but also just a little bit odd and lacked the spark in another way. And next, I actually read my first dark romance, if you consider it dark, and I just don't know how to feel, and that is The Initiation by Nikki Sloane. I had heard from a couple of people that the audiobook of this was great, which is totally true. I loved the audiobook narrator. I think she did a wonderful job, and I think Riley Marie talked about this book and how it was so great, and like she like could not put it down, and I do agree with that aspect. This basically, it's really hard to describe what this book is, because dark romance, if you're unfamiliar with dark romances, they normally deal with really intense relationships, I should say, or relationships that would be considered like taboo. You kind of have to separate fiction from reality while you're reading these books, because there are some interesting things that go down in this book, and I'm not really entirely sure how I felt about this one. I'm not sure if dark romances are necessarily for me, but this book basically follows a girl. I don't recall her name right now, but it basically follows this girl, and she is a part of this this is gonna sound really weird. She's basically a part of this extremely rich family. I don't even know what you would call what she's a part of. It's like this company that it kind of feels like royalty type thing, but it's just like a business. But think of like the main head of this business as like the king, and he has like all of these families like below him. Everyone is so concerned about their reputation, because if their reputation is ruined, they are like kicked out of this group, and that means like their financial ruin, and they would be like super poor and all that stuff. But basically, the main girl's sister is supposed to marry the son of this king figure. I'm so sorry I'm calling him like this king. That's the only way I can like describe what this is. Like the main CEO owner guy, his son. Her sister's supposed to marry the son, but then something goes wrong, and so the girl has to marry the son, and it goes from there, and it doesn't really get dark until like 50%, and it is really surprising during this, because basically it's called The Initiation because in order for them to get married, they have to go through this initiation, and the initiation is super mysterious, and I'm not going to say what it is because that's like the whole point of the plot, but I still don't know exactly how I feel about it. Like, I enjoyed it in that I could not put it down, and I really wanted to see what happened, but I also was super uncomfortable while reading it. It's just such a weird experience for me. I'm not sure if dark romances are for me. I just don't know if I'm there yet. Yeah, so that's all I'm going to say about that before I just keep saying inarticulate thoughts. And the last book I managed to finish this month is a book that I read for my whiteness class. I talked about this last month. I talked about this, how I'm taking a class called like Disrupting Whiteness, and we're talking about whiteness and white supremacy and the everyday ways that it presents itself in our society. So I read Playing in the Dark by Toni Morrison. This is my first Morrison like strict book. I've read like a bunch of stuff that like excerpts of what she has written, but this is the first like text that I've read, and this is more theory, and it really talks about how many like literature scholars or people in academia really ignore the presence of Black individuals in literature, or they say that they're not important, when actually without Black people, a lot of the historic classics that we all think of and know not exist without the existence of Black characters, etc., etc. But yeah, I thought this was really insightful. It was pretty confusing at times, and I a little bit lost for a little bit of it, but I overall took a lot from this book, so I'm really glad that I did read it. Okay, so those are all the books that I read in February. I'll quickly go through the 2 books that I'm currently reading. The first book, guys, I am obsessed with this book, and that is Seduce Me at Sunrise by Lisa Kleypas. This is the 2nd book in the Hathaway series, guys. I was like, last night, I was on page like 80, and right now, after last night reading, I'm on page like 276. I read like 200 pages, like nearly 200 pages of this book yesterday because it was just that good. Guys, I was like screaming in my bed last night. I love it so much. And the 2nd book that I'm currently reading is Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bellefleur, I think. And this one is a sapphic retelling of Pride and Prejudice, that's what I want to say. And it's a hate to love romance. I'm not really far into it, but I am really, I'm not really enjoying it too much yet, just because it's really focusing on the hate aspect of their relationship, and I'm not a super big fan of hate to love. But yeah, I've heard really good things about this book. So yeah, I will give more of my thoughts after I finished it. Again, I've only gotten like 2 hours into it, so yeah. Okay, so there you have it. Those are all of the books that I managed to read in February, along with my current reads. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have made it this far in the video, can you put a star emoji in the comments? I would really appreciate it. And give this video a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new and want to see more from me, and I will see you later in another video very soon. Bye!